Damien's voice cut through the room like a knife. "You won't get a single cent of my money. Not one," he shouted, his cruelty freezing my blood. We had just come back from my wife's funeral, and already my son was someone I could hardly recognize. His eyes burned with a greed I had never seen before. "The 300 million is mine now, Dad," he continued, shaking the will papers in my face. "It all belongs to me, and you don't matter anymore. Only 12 hours. Just 12 short hours since we laid the love of my life to rest, and already my own son was throwing me out of the home we had built together over 40 years of marriage." "Damien, please," I whispered, my black suit still damp with grief, my face streaked with tears. "We just buried your mother. How can you be this heartless?" "Heartless?" He laughed with scorn. "You want to know what's cruel? You, Dad. You've lived like a leech off Mum's money all these years. But those days are finished. This house is mine, the money is mine, and you are nothing." From the corner of the room, attorney Dr. Adrian Fernandez shifted uncomfortably. He had been the one to read the will that morning, confirming Isabella's fortune was left entirely to our son. Yet there was something in his eyes that told me the truth wasn't so simple. "You have 24 hours to get out," Damien declared, pacing the living room like he had conquered it. "And don't you dare come back. You're not my problem anymore. For 40 years you lived off Mum, but now it's time for you to learn what real work feels like." My hands shook, not from fear, but from a fury that burned hotter with each second. This was the same boy I had once cradled in my arms, taught to ride a bike, comforted through sleepless nights. "At least, did you read the whole will?" Dr. Adrian muttered suddenly. His voice carried a weight that made Damien freeze mid-step. "What do you mean by that?" My son snapped back, but for the first time that day, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. Adrian looked at me, and in that instant I understood what he meant. A faint smile tugged at my lips as Damien's confidence faltered. "Nothing," Adrian said aloud, though his sly smile betrayed him. "Nothing important. You'll find out soon enough." Rage twisted Damien's face. He stormed toward me, his steps heavy and aggressive. "I don't care what that will says. The money is mine, the house is mine, and you," he shoved me hard toward the door, nearly knocking me off balance. "You're leaving, right now." The slam of the door behind me echoed like a gunshot. "You know what? I don't ever want to see you at another funeral," Damien spat with venom. "From this moment on, you're dead to me." The door slammed behind me with a force that echoed through the house like the crack of a gun. I found myself standing in the driveway as a light rain began to fall. My eyes lifted to the home where I had lived in happiness for 40 long years. The windows Isabella and I had chosen together, the garden we had planted with our own hands, all of it now felt like memories turning into ashes. I walked slowly toward my car, each step heavy as if I were dragging chains. My black suit clung to me, soaked through by the rain, but I hardly noticed. The cold water on my skin was nothing compared to the ice spreading through my chest. "Mr. Alexander, wait." Dr. Adrian's voice called out behind me. He ran up, carrying a briefcase tightly under his arm. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent." I looked into his eyes, and in that moment, I saw something that gave me strength, understanding, a secret knowledge. It was the same knowing look Isabella often had when she was planning something no one else could see. "Is it what I think it is?" I whispered. Adrian nodded firmly. "Your wife was far wiser than Damien realizes. And you, Alexander, must know the truth before it's too late." I followed him into his car. As we drove away, I turned my head and saw Damien peering out from the main living room window. His face was no longer full of victory. Worry had replaced triumph, and I knew he feared what I might uncover. The drive to Adrian's office was quiet. My thoughts churned between disbelief and a heavy anger rising like fire inside me. 40 years. 40 years of love and partnership with Isabella. Together we had built not only wealth but a life, a family, and now my own son had cast me aside like I was nothing but a stranger. "Sit down, Alexander," Adrian said gently as soon as we arrived. His eyes held both pity and something else, perhaps hope. I sank into the leather chair across from his desk, the same place where Isabella and I had once signed our will. Around me, his walls were lined with diplomas and family photos, a cruel reminder of everything I had just lost. "Alexander," Adrian began, opening his briefcase slowly, "there is something Damien doesn't know. Your wife, she was remarkably careful. She knew your son's true nature better than anyone." I pulled a tissue from my pocket, wiping the tears that refused to stop. My voice broke as I whispered, "Adrian, please, I have already lost my wife. My wife is gone, and now I've lost my son too," I whispered. "Please don't give me false hope." Adrian leaned forward, his voice steady. "This isn't hope, Alexander. These are legal facts." He spread several papers across the desk. "Do you remember 6 months ago when Isabella asked to meet me without Damien?" I nodded slowly. The memory was still sharp. Isabella had been very clear that day. She wanted to discuss private matters that only concerned the two of us. "That meeting," Adrian continued, pointing to a section of the will, "was when your wife added a special clause, a safeguard. It was designed to be activated only under certain conditions." I leaned closer, my heart pounding as he guided my eyes to a paragraph. "If Damien ever showed extreme cruelty toward you, especially during the mourning period, then the entire inheritance would automatically return to you." For a moment I couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Adrian's lips curved into the first smile I had seen all day. "I'm saying your wife knew her son better than anyone. She made sure you'd be protected. The 300 million, the house, the properties, the investments, all of it would be yours again if we can prove Damien crossed the line." Tears blurred my sight, but this time they weren't from grief. They tasted different, something like relief, or maybe justice. "And how do we prove it?" I asked, my hands shaking. Adrian pulled out his phone. The recording screen was still active. "I recorded everything this afternoon. Every cruel word he said, every insult, even the moment he pushed you out of the house while you were still mourning your wife." I covered my face and cried. But now my tears carried gratitude for Isabella, my beloved Isabella, who was still protecting me from beyond the grave. "There's more," Adrian said carefully. "Your wife left instructions. You must let Damien believe he has full control. You need to let him make choices that will reveal his true character. Only then can the clause be used without doubt." "You mean," I said slowly, "I have to keep pretending that I'm ruined?" "Exactly," Adrian replied. "Your wife understood your son too well. She knew power would corrupt him quickly. She also knew you would need time to see if you wanted to claim everything back or give him one final chance." I rose from the chair and walked to the window. Outside, the city carried on as if nothing had happened, but inside me the weight of Isabel's wisdom pressed heavily. She had always been 3 steps ahead in business, and now I realized she had been 3 steps ahead in protecting her family too. "What should I do now?" I asked softly without turning from the window. "Go to a simple hotel," Adrian advised. "Live as if you truly lost everything. I'll keep an eye on Damien's actions. According to your wife's plan, he will reveal his true nature very soon." "And if he doesn't?" I whispered. "What if this was only grief? What if he really changes?" Adrian stepped closer and placed a firm, fatherly hand on my shoulder. "Alexander, with all due respect, we both know that's not going to happen. Damien showed his real self today. Your wife saw this coming, and that's exactly why she... In recent years, I watched our son grow greedy and unkind. Remember when he dismissed Mr. Henry, the gardener, simply for asking for a raise after 2 decades of loyalty? Or when he turned his back on your nephew, Ethan, when he was desperate for help? I've seen how he speaks to the housekeepers, how he looks down on anyone with less than him." I paused and lifted my eyes to the dark window, my heart aching as her words echoed the truth I had refused to see for so long. Isabella had noticed what I refused to admit for years. Our son was no longer the boy we had raised. He had turned into someone unrecognizable. "But there is more you must know, my love," her letter continued. "The 300 million listed in the official will is not the full amount of what we own. There are other accounts, properties in your name, and investments only the two of us knew about. The true value of our fortune is 450 million. My breath caught in my throat. 450 million. Isabella had been even more careful and wise than I ever imagined. The hidden accounts are at the First National Bank, downtown branch, in your name, Alexander Anderson. The password is May 15th, 1985, the date of our first kiss. Dr. Adrian has the documents, but he will only give them to you when you are ready to take full control. I read on, my hands shaking. Each line revealed how far Isabella had gone to prepare for this moment. Your task is simple but not easy. Watch and wait. Let Damien believe everything is his. Power will expose him. He will spend, waste, and reveal his true character to the world. By the time you reveal the truth, he will already have faced humility the hard way. Remember, Alexander, this isn't about punishing him. It's about saving him. Our son has lost his path, but there is still time for him to rediscover his true heart. Only through loss will he learn to treasure what truly matters. The letter went on with exact instructions. Isabella had planned every detail, trusted allies who would guide me through this period, and a step-by-step plan, not just to restore my fortune, but to reclaim in her hope our son. I trust you to make the right choice when the time comes. You are the most compassionate and wise man I know. I believe you will turn this tragedy into growth for our family. At the end, a final note made me smile through my tears. P.S. At the bank there is also an extra surprise. Our old friend Jason has quietly been managing technology investments not included in the official count. Let's just say our true wealth may be greater than you ever imagined. I love you endlessly, Isabella. I folded the letter with great care and tucked it into my jacket, together with the legal papers. My mind spun as I tried to process it all. Isabella had not only secured our financial safety, but she had created a chance to save Damien's very soul. I lifted the hotel phone and dialed Dr. Adrian. "Alexander, is everything all right?" he asked. "I read Isabella's letter," I replied quietly. "Tomorrow, I want to go to the bank. I need to see everything with my own eyes before I decide what to do next." "Of course," Adrian said warmly. "I'll pick you up at 9. And Alexander, your wife was an extraordinary woman. In 30 years as a lawyer, I've never seen an act of love as deep as what she has done for you and your family." That night, sleep barely came, not because of grief or fear, but because of something new, expectation. For the first time since Isabella's passing, I felt a clear purpose. It was no longer about wealth, it was about something far greater, about saving my son. The next morning, Adrian arrived right on time. As we drove through the city, he spoke of the secrets Isabella had shared with him. "Your wife noticed Damien's change about 2 years ago," Adrian explained. "That's when she began shifting her assets quietly. She wanted to make sure you would be safe, no matter what your son chose to do." At the bank, we were met by the branch's personal manager, a graceful woman named Olivia. She greeted us with the kind of formality reserved for clients of immense importance. "Mr. Alexander, I'm truly sorry for your loss," she said gently as she led us into a private office. "Your wife was one of our most respected clients. Let me also say, the measures she set up for you were remarkably wise." For the next 2 hours, Olivia guided me through the reality Isabella had built in silence. She explained the hidden investments, the overseas properties, the funds that had quietly grown over time. Finally, she looked at me and said, "The total estate, including market adjustments since Mrs. Isabella's passing, now stands at $462 million. I leaned back in my chair, stunned not only by the vastness of her achievements, but by the brilliance of her plan to guard her family's future. "And the accounts Damien knows about?" I asked carefully. "They do exist," Olivia confirmed. "They contain the 300 million mentioned in the will. But they remain tied to the clause," Dr. Adrian explained. "If the condition is triggered, those funds automatically return to you." When we stepped out of the bank, the world felt different. I was no longer a broken widower cast aside by his son. I was a man with the power and the resources to decide the path of this story and to change its ending. But before I could act, I needed to see how far Damien would go in his new life as a millionaire heir. What he didn't know was that every step he took was being quietly watched by someone who held far more power than he could ever imagine. For the next 2 weeks, I became nothing more than a silent observer of my son's transformation. From the modest hotel room I now called home, and with Dr. Adrian's discreet assistance, I watched Damien reveal his true self to the world. The first sign came only 3 days after he had forced me out of the house. Dr. Adrian phoned with a tone so heavy it chilled my blood. "Alexander," he said, "he fired the entire household staff. Emily, who had served in the kitchen for 15 years, Sophia, the housekeeper who had practically raised him. They were all dismissed with a small payment, no gratitude, no reason, only that he no longer needed them. Emily had even called Adrian in tears, wondering if she had done something wrong. This woman had prepared thousands of meals for our family, cared for Damien when he was a boy, been almost a second mother to him. And what excuse did he give?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. Adrian sighed. According to Emily, he told her people like her had no place in his new life. He said he would hire more sophisticated staff, people he thought matched his new position. I shut my eyes and felt a sharp pain cut through my chest. Isabella had been right. Money was stripping away the mask, showing the cruel side of our son. But that was only the beginning. A week later, Adrian laid photographs on the table, images captured by a private investigator Isabella had hired long before. In them, Damien walked out of luxury stores with arms full of bags, purchases worth more than our loyal employees earned in a year. He spent $150,000 in a single day, Adrian said gravely as he showed me the receipts. Clothes, shoes, watches, things he doesn't need, things he bought only because he could. Yet the photo that broke me was different. Damien was smiling, surrounded by new so-called friends, people who had only appeared after learning of his inheritance. He wore a suit worth more than Emily's car and raised $1,000 bottle of champagne in celebration. "And there's more," Adrian continued, his voice growing heavier. "Yesterday, he went to the country club where you and Isabella had been members for 20 years. He cancelled your membership," Adrian told me quietly, "and asked to have your name erased from all their records." "What?" I whispered, the words hitting me like a blow to the stomach. "He told the manager you were no longer relevant. He said he didn't want his name connected to yours in any way." I sank onto the hotel bed and broke down. My tears weren't for the membership itself, but for the cruel intention behind it. Damien wasn't just enjoying his wealth, he was trying to erase me completely from his life. That same afternoon, the phone rang with a call I never expected. It was Mr. Henry, our old gardener, the same man Damien had dismissed years ago for daring to ask for a small raise. "Mr. Alexander," he said gently, "I'm sorry to disturb you during such painful days, but I must tell you something." He explained that he had gone to the house to offer his condolences after Isabella's death, but Damien had greeted him with such coldness that it left him shaken. He told me men like me had no right to set foot in that house. He shouted at me to leave and never return, saying poor people had no place in his new life. Mr. Henry's voice broke as he added, "Your family was like my own for 20 years. I cared for those gardens as if they were mine, and yet he treated me like dirt." When I hung up, I sat in silence for hours. Isabella had foreseen this with painful clarity. She had seen the cruelty in Damien long before I dared to admit it, and now money was feeding that darkness, turning him into someone I could hardly call my son. The very next day, Adrian arrived with even more troubling news. He laid out a pile of documents across the small cafe table at my hotel. "Damien is preparing to sell properties," he said gravely. "The beach house where you and Isabella spent summers, the downtown apartment she bought for Damien when he went to college, even the office where Isabella built her empire. Why would he do that?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. The real estate agent says he wants fast cash for flashy investments. His new circle of friends has convinced him there are businesses that promise quick profits. And so, during the following days, I watched from the shadows as Damien kept tearing down everything Isabella and I had worked so hard to create. It wasn't just property he was destroying. It was our values, our relationships, and the respect that had been the foundation of our family for decades. 3 weeks after he had cast me out of my own home, the final straw arrived. The phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was Dr. Adrian, and I knew he would never call that early unless it was urgent. "Alexander, you must come to my office immediately," he said, his voice tense. "Damien has done something that changes everything." An hour later, I was sitting across from him, watching a video on his computer that made my chest tighten. The footage came from the country club's security cameras. On the screen, Damien arrived at a charity gala Isabella and I had hosted every year for a decade. This year, the event had continued in Isabella's honor, and everyone expected Damien to make a symbolic donation to keep the tradition alive. But instead, he walked in like a king, his head high, his suit glittering with arrogance. He interrupted the event and, before a shocked crowd, announced he was canceling every donation our family had promised. "My mother is dead," he declared, "and with her, those foolish charities are dead too. Money has better uses than wasting it on people who don't even know how to value it." The camera showed the faces in the audience, people who had admired Isabella for years, people who had watched Damien grow up. Their expressions shifted from disbelief to disgust. "There's more," Adrian said grimly, switching to another video. This time the recording was from the parking lot after the gala. Damien was confronted by Jonathan, one of Isabella's oldest friends and the director of a foundation our family had long supported. "Damien," Jonathan said, his voice heavy with grief, "your mother would be ashamed. These donations feed and shelter hundreds of struggling families. How could you be so heartless?" Damien's reply cut through me like a blade. "My mother was a naive dreamer. I'm smarter than her. Money isn't for weaklings, it's for enjoying life, not throwing away on losers who refuse to work." Adrian paused the video and turned to me. His eyes were firm. "Alexander, it's time. The will's clauses must be enforced. Damien has crossed every possible line." But I shook my head. Isabella had not only left me the legal means to reclaim everything, she had left me her wisdom too. She had taught me that this wasn't just about wealth, it was about my son's soul. "Not yet, Adrian," I said with a strength I hadn't felt in weeks. First, he must face the weight of his own choices, and I didn't have to wait long. The universe itself began to move against Damien. The consequences came exactly 1 month after he cast me out of the home I had built with Isabella, and they came in a form I never saw coming. It was his own friends who finally turned on him. One morning, Dr. Adrian called with news that filled me with both grim satisfaction and deep fatherly worry. "Alexander," he said in a heavy voice, "Damien's new business partners have vanished. They took $50 million. I sank slowly into the chair in my small hotel room, the weight of the number pressing on me. 50 million, 1/6 of the fortune Damien thought he had full control over. How could this happen, I asked, though a part of me already knew. Isabella had often warned me that greed and inexperience were easy prey for predators. Adrian explained what the private investigator had uncovered. Damien had met the so-called investors at an elite party 3 weeks earlier. They lured him in with promises of doubling his money in 6 months through a European art import business. As Adrian spoke, he sent me details by text, fake names, false companies, carefully crafted bank accounts. The scheme was elaborate, designed to trap wealthy but naive heirs like Damien. "The worst part," Adrian added, his tone bitter, "is that he signed everything without even seeking advice. He told them he didn't need lawyers anymore, that he trusted his own instincts." That afternoon, the call I never expected finally came. It was Damien. His voice was no longer confident or arrogant. It was small, trembling, almost childlike. "Dad," he whispered, and for a brief moment he sounded like the little boy I had once held during his nightmares. "Hello, Damien," I answered calmly, bracing myself for what lay ahead. I need to talk to you. Could we meet?" "Where would you like?" I asked gently, noticing how carefully he avoided mentioning the house, our house. "Could you come? Come home, please." 30 minutes later, I stood at the door of the home where I had lived happily for 40 years. Damien opened it at once, as if he had been waiting there all along. He looked broken. His once perfect hair was messy, his expensive shirt wrinkled, and he was still wearing yesterday's clothes. "Come in, please," he muttered, his eyes avoiding mine. Inside, the house was a stranger to me. The warm furniture Isabella and I had chosen together was gone, replaced by cold, modern pieces. Family photos had vanished, replaced by soulless abstract art. Even the air smelled different, as if someone had scrubbed away the memories themselves. "What happened, Damien?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Damien collapsed onto the sleek leather sofa, his face buried in his hands as sobs shook his body. "I was cheated, Dad," he cried. "I lost 50 million. Those men I trusted vanished with everything." I sat down beside him, restraining the instinct to put an arm around him. Isabella had seen this moment coming, and I knew I had to let the lesson sink in. "And what will you do now?" I asked softly. "I don't know," he admitted between tears. "The lawyers I spoke to said it's nearly impossible to get the money back. The scammers used fake names and hidden accounts in tax havens. I even begged Dr. Adrian to handle the case, but he refused." Of course, Adrian had refused. He understood, as I did, that this was all part of Isabella's design, a way to make Damien face the consequences of his own choices. "Why call me Damien?" I asked firmly. He lifted his eyes to mine. For the first time in months, I saw a spark of humility in them, because I realized I have no one else. All those so-called friends vanished the moment they heard about the loss, and I pushed away everyone who loved me, including you. His tears ran harder. "Especially you, Dad. What I did to you was unforgivable. I threw you out right after Mom's funeral, when you needed me most. I was cruel. I was heartless." It was the first time in years I had heard him accept responsibility for his actions. Still, I knew the journey was far from over, and now, I asked carefully, "What do you expect me to do?" "I don't know," he whispered. "I know I don't deserve your help, but could you stay?" "It means Damien will have no access to his funds for at least 2 months." I hung up and went upstairs to tell my son. His response revealed more about his growth than anything else. He sat in silence for several minutes, letting the words sink in. Then, to my surprise, he didn't panic. His first words came calmly. "I guess this is what I deserve," he said. "After everything I've done, after the way I treated people, maybe it's time I learn what it feels like to live like everyone else." That answer gave me hope, but I knew the real trial would come over the next weeks, when he had to face life without the safety net of endless money. The 2 months that followed became the most eye-opening of Damien's life. With the accounts locked and only a small amount of cash left, he was forced into a reality he had never known: financial limits. At first, he clung to his old habits, trying to cover expenses with credit cards and luxury items he had bought. But when the bills piled up and deadlines came knocking, reality struck him hard, like a cold slap across the face. "Dad, I don't understand how this works," he admitted one morning, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of bills in front of him. "The numbers don't make sense. The monthly costs of this house are higher than what most people make in a salary." It was the first time in his life he had seen what it really took to maintain the lifestyle he had always taken for granted. Isabella and I had shielded him from financial burdens for so long, thinking we were protecting him. But instead, we had raised a man who didn't even know the true price of the life he lived. "How much do you think it costs to keep this house running each month?" I asked, curious if he had even the slightest grasp of reality. "I don't know," he muttered. "Take a guess." 5,000, he said weakly. I laid the bills in front of him. 22,000, I replied firmly. "That's utilities, maintenance, insurance, and the new cleaning staff you hired after firing the people who served us faithfully for years." His face drained of color. 22,000 every month? And that doesn't even include food, gas, or your personal expenses. That's just to keep the lights on and the doors open. For the first time, he began to grasp the depth of his situation. With no access to the main accounts and massive expenses piling up, his money was vanishing faster than he imagined. "What am I going to do?" he whispered, fear flashing in his eyes, the same raw fear I had only seen when he was a child. "Well," I said evenly, "you could start by looking for a job." He let out a bitter laugh. "A job? Dad, I don't know how to do anything. I've never worked a day in my life. Who would even hire me?" As painful as it was, he was right. Damien was 35 years old, holding a degree he had never used, and no work experience at all. Isabella and I had thought we were protecting him by giving him everything. In truth, we had left him helpless for the real world. Over the next week, I watched him try to find work. His first attempts were almost pitiful. He sent applications to major companies for managerial roles, convinced his last name and education would be enough. "They told me I need experience," he complained after his fifth rejection. "How can I get experience if no one gives me the chance?" Maybe, I told him gently, you should begin with something simpler, a place where you can learn as you go. At first, his pride fought the idea. The thought of working in an entry-level job felt humiliating to him. But when the second electricity bill arrived unpaid and the utility company warned of cutting the power, his pride finally cracked. 3 weeks later, Damien secured a part-time job at an electronics store. His pay was $1,200 a month, a sum he used to spend in a single afternoon of shopping. "It's humiliating, Dad," he confessed after his first day. "My manager is 10 years younger than me and treats me like I know nothing. And the customers, some are unbelievably demanding." "And how does it feel to work?" I asked, keeping to myself the painful irony that he was now experiencing the same treatment he had once dished out to others. "Exhausted," Damien admitted one evening. "My feet ache. My back hurts. I don't understand how people manage this kind of work for years, even decades." But after his second week at the store, I noticed something shifting. His words began to change. "There's a man named Jason who works the morning shift," he told me one night. "He has 2 kids and takes care of his elderly father. He works 2 jobs, never complains, never shows up late, and he still helps every customer with a smile. I don't know how he does it." "Did you talk with him?" I asked. "Yes," Damien nodded. "He's been here 8 years. He started when his wife became ill and needed health insurance. He's been working extra hours ever since." Damien paused, clearly troubled. "Dad, I cried over losing 50 million. Jason has probably never held 10,000 in his life, and yet he's stronger than me." It was the first time in years I heard Damien speak with genuine respect for someone without wealth or status. A tiny step, but one Isabella would have been proud of. The real turning point came a month later. That night, Damien came home visibly shaken. "Dad, something awful happened at work today." His voice trembled. "Jason got a call from the hospital. His father needs emergency surgery, $8,000. His insurance doesn't cover all of it." "And what did he do?" I asked. "He broke down," Damien whispered. "I've never seen a man so desperate. He said he doesn't have the money. He already spent his savings on his wife's medical bills. Now he doesn't know what to do." Damien sat in silence for a long time, battling with something inside. Finally he spoke. "Dad, I own a watch worth more than that surgery. I have suits in my closet that cost more than Jason earns in a year, and he has to choose between saving his father and feeding his children." "What will you do about it?" I asked gently. His eyes hardened with resolve. "I want to help him. I'll sell something I don't need. That Rolex I bought last month for 15,000. I can sell it and give him the money. It's useless compared to his father's life." That night, after Damien fell asleep, I called Dr. Adrian. "How's the plan unfolding?" he asked me. "Better than Isabella hoped," I replied. "I think he's truly changing. For the first time in years, I see the boy I once knew, the one with a heart full of compassion." "Is it time to tell him the truth?" Adrian asked. "Not yet," I said firmly. "There's still one more test," I told myself. I need to see if this change in him is real or just a reaction to fear and loss. The very next day, Damien sold his Rolex and handed the money to Jason. I watched the tears of gratitude in that man's eyes and the look of quiet pride on my son's face. In that moment, I knew we had reached a turning point. But fate had one more trial prepared for Damien, something even Isabella could not have predicted. That same week, a letter arrived that shifted everything once again. It was from a different lawyer, representing the estate of Isabella's distant uncle, who had recently passed away. Mr. Damien, the letter read, "We regret to inform you that Mr. Gregory Peterson has died and has named you his only heir. His estate amounts to approximately $75 million. The paper slipped from Damien's hands as he stared at me in disbelief. $75 million more, he whispered. After everything I've lost, after everything I've learned, suddenly more money appears. This was it. The final test. What would Damien do now, after tasting both emptiness and compassion? The inheritance was real. But what Damien didn't know was that Isabella had arranged a safeguard years earlier. I held veto power over Gregory's estate. Her younger brother had always trusted her judgment, and by extension mine. I chose not to reveal that detail immediately. I wanted to see Damien's true reaction to this new temptation. His first words told me everything. "I can't believe it," he said, reading the letter over and over. "Just when I thought I had nothing, when I was finally learning to live differently, this appears. And how does it make you feel?" I asked, watching him closely. "Confused," he admitted honestly. 2 months ago, this would have solved everything. I would have rushed to claim the money and gone back to my old life. But now I don't know if I even want that life back." He sank into the sofa and looked out at the garden. Mr. Henry's garden, the one he had tended with such love for years. "Dad," Damien said slowly, "do you know what I discovered working at that store?" "What?" I asked. "I learned I can do things I never thought I could. I can work a full day. I can solve problems. I can help people. And for the first time in my life, when someone says thank you, I know I actually earned it." His words filled me with a hope I hadn't felt in months. This was the Damien Isabella, and I had always hoped to see one day. But instead of talking about how rich he would become, he said something that startled me. 75 million could change many lives, he whispered. It could help Jason, it could help Emily, it could help Mr. Henry, all the people I mistreated when I thought money made me better than them. That night, Damien did something I never expected. He didn't celebrate, and he didn't start dreaming about luxuries. Instead, he sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. "What are you doing?" I asked curiously. "I'm making a list," he replied without lifting his head. "A list of everyone I hurt, everything I destroyed, and how I can use this money to make things right." For the next 2 hours, I quietly watched him write. He filled page after page with names, numbers, and detailed plans. Jason and his father were at the top. Emily and Mr. Henry came next. Then the charities he had cancelled, followed by the employees at the electronics store who were working for barely enough to survive. When he finally stopped, Damien closed the notebook and looked at me. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. "Do you think Mom would forgive me for everything I did?" The question pierced my heart. Isabella had planned this exact moment, guiding him towards self-awareness and repentance. Your mother loved you without limits, Damien, but even more than forgiveness, she wanted you to discover the man she always knew you could become. And do you think I'm becoming him? He asked carefully. Before I could answer, the phone rang. It was Dr. Adrian, and his voice carried urgency. Alexander, I need to speak with you and Damien right away. Something important has come up about Gregory's inheritance. What kind of news? I asked. I'd rather explain it face to face. Can you both come to my office tomorrow morning? That night I barely slept. I knew Adrian likely wanted to discuss my veto power over the inheritance. The moment had come to make a final decision about Damien's future. The next morning we arrived at Adrian's office early. Damien wore his uniform from the electronics store. Seeing him dressed simply, with comfortable shoes instead of polished designer loafers, showed me how much he had truly changed. Please sit, Dr. Adrian said with a serious expression. He looked directly at Damien. There's something about your Uncle Gregory's inheritance you must understand. Damien leaned forward, tense and focused. Your Uncle Gregory was a wise man, Adrian continued, and he understood very well what happened in your family after your mother's death. Before he passed, your uncle left a very strict condition for his inheritance, Dr. Adrian explained. What kind of condition? Damien asked quickly. I could hear the unease in his voice. Adrian opened a folder and pulled out a document. The inheritance can only be released if your father, Alexander, signs a written statement confirming that you've shown a real change in character and that you are ready to handle such a fortune with responsibility. The words hung in the room like heavy air. Damien slowly turned his eyes toward me. In them I saw surprise, fear, and most unexpectedly, relief. Did you know this? He asked softly. I only found out last night when Dr. Adrian called me. I replied gently, though in truth I had known for much longer, but this wasn't the moment to reveal that. And what do you think? Damien's voice shook slightly. Do you believe I've changed enough to deserve it? This was the moment I had been waiting for months. A single question that would decide not just his financial future, but the man he would choose to become. Before I answer, I said carefully, let me ask you something first. If I told you that you weren't ready, if you lost this inheritance forever, how would you feel? Damien stayed silent for a long time, thinking. At last, he said, 2 months ago, I would have fallen apart. I would have begged, promised anything, even thrown a tantrum. But now, he lifted his eyes and looked straight into mine. Now I think I'd be okay. I've learned I can survive without millions. I've learned I can work, contribute, and be useful without leaning on wealth. And if I say yes, if I say you're ready, what would you do with 75 million? Without hesitation, Damien reached for the notebook he had filled the night before. First, I'd repair the damage I caused. I'd compensate those I hurt. I'd restore the donations I cancelled. I'd make sure nobody else suffered because of my selfishness. His voice grew steadier with each word. Then I'd use the money to create real opportunities, scholarships, training programs, support for hard-working fathers like Jason, things that change lives. And what about you? I asked. What would be left for your personal life? Enough to live comfortably, he said with a calm smile, but not extravagantly. I don't need to prove my worth through fancy things anymore. These past months have taught me something. True wealth doesn't sit in your bank account. True wealth is in the relationships you build, Damien said softly. It's in the difference you make in other people's lives, in looking in the mirror and finally respecting the person staring back at you. Dr. Adrian and I exchanged a look. It was clear. Damien had passed his greatest test. But there was still one last truth waiting, one that would turn his entire understanding of the past months upside down. Damien, I said, drawing in a deep breath. There's something you need to know, something your mother planned long ago, back when she first began to worry about the path you were taking. He looked at me with a mix of curiosity and fear. Dr. Adrian, I said quietly, please show him the real documents. The lawyer opened a thicker folder and spread several papers across the desk. Damien stared at them, confused at first, until I began to speak. These are your mother's true will, I explained calmly, the one she prepared, knowing exactly how you would react when you thought you had inherited everything. The real will, Damien whispered, his face turned pale. Your mother never left you the 300 million, I said firmly. Everything you've lived these past months, every struggle, every loss, it was all part of a plan she created to save you from yourself. I told him everything I had kept hidden, the clause that gave the inheritance back to me if he showed cruelty, the secret accounts I had control over, the truth that I had never really lost my role as heir. I always knew what was happening, I admitted, watching tears fill his eyes. But I wanted you to learn. I wanted you to see who you truly were and who you could become. You mean? His voice broke. I mean, I said gently, your mother loved you so deeply, she was willing to let you believe she had abandoned you just so she could save you. And I loved you enough to endure your hatred, to let you throw me out, to suffer your cruelty, because I knew it was the only way you would discover your true self. Damien collapsed then, crying not with the despair of someone who had lost money, but with the raw grief of someone who finally realized the depth of love he had been blind to. Mum knew I'd become a monster, he sobbed, and still she found a way to save me. And you, his voice cracked, you endured everything, knowing you could have stopped me at any time. Your mother wrote in her letter that her goal was never to punish you, Damien. It was always to save you, and I was willing to endure every insult, every wound, if it meant one day I could have my son back. Dr. Adrian quietly handed us a box of tissues. He didn't say a word as Damien tried to process everything through heavy sobs. So, the 50 million I lost to the scammers, Damien asked, his voice breaking, that was real money? Yes, Dr. Adrian answered gently. That part wasn't staged. Your mother set aside that money in accounts you could actually use, knowing mistakes would teach you more than success ever could. The scammers only sped up that lesson, and Gregory's inheritance, Damien asked again, his voice lower now. It's real too, I replied. But as you know, it depends on my approval. Your uncle Gregory trusted your mother's judgment, and she made sure I had the final word. Damien sat in silence for several minutes. When he finally looked up, his eyes carried pain, gratitude, and a new kind of awe. Dad, can you forgive me? He whispered. Not just for these last months, but for years, years of selfishness, cruelty, and blindness to everything you and Mom sacrificed for me. I already forgave you, Damien, I said softly. I forgave you the very first day, because I knew the boy I raised was still alive inside you, buried under the greed and bitterness. And now what? He asked carefully. What happens with the money? With the real inheritance? I reached into my jacket and pulled out the document I had prepared with Dr. Adrian the night before. I've decided to divide everything equally between us, I explained. But there will be conditions. Your share will be placed in a fund that we will manage together. Every major decision will be made jointly, and a large part must go toward charity and repairing the harm you've caused. And if I refuse, he asked quietly, then you'll still get a fixed amount enough to live comfortably. But you won't have access to the main fortune. The choice is yours. Damien didn't hesitate. I accept, he said firmly. I accept every condition. He rose from his chair and walked slowly to the window. Dad, he continued, these months taught me something I never understood before. Money only has value when it's used to do good. Without that, it's just paper that eats away at your soul. And your job at the electronics store? I asked with a faint smile. I'm keeping it for now, he said with determination. Jason and the others there are my real friends, not like the parasites who used to circle me. And besides, I like the feeling of earning my own paycheck, no matter how small. Dr. Adrian began drafting the official papers while Damien and I quietly discussed the steps ahead. Yet before anything was finalized, there was one more question I had to ask. Damien, I said carefully, I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, Dad, he answered without hesitation. Are you living this change because you truly have changed, or only because you now know I control the money? It was the most important question of all, the one that would prove whether these months of pain had truly meant something. Damien paused, thinking deeply before replying. 2 hours ago, he said slowly, when I still believed Gregory's inheritance depended on your approval, I had already decided that even if you said no, I would keep trying to be a better man, not for money, not for approval, but because for the first time in my life, I actually like the person I'm becoming. He stepped closer, resting his hand gently on my shoulder. Dad, these months of struggle, of real work, of meeting people who face problems every single day, they taught me what 35 years of wealth never could. True wealth is in the bonds you build and the good you choose to do. Money is only a tool to make that possible. And are you sure, I asked softly, that you'll never go back to the man you were before? I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, Damien admitted honestly. But I can promise I'll never forget these lessons, and if I ever lose my way again, I hope you'll be there to stop me. That afternoon, we signed all the documents. Damien officially became co-owner of a fortune worth more than $500 million, including Gregory's inheritance and the investments that had grown during the hardest months of our lives. But the money was no longer what mattered most. What we had regained was far more valuable, our bond as father and son, and the chance to use that wealth for something greater. As we left Dr. Adrian's office, Damien turned to me with a request I never expected. Dad, he said earnestly, can we visit Mr. Henry? I want to apologize to him face to face, not just to give him his job back, but to help him grow something bigger, maybe a landscaping business with our support. Walking toward the car, I thought about the miracle I had just witnessed. Isabella had been right from the very beginning. Sometimes, to save someone you love, you must let them fall to the bottom. Let them stumble, let them learn, and let them rediscover the true value of life. But what neither Isabella nor I had foreseen was that there was still one last surprise waiting, one final twist that would change everything we thought we knew about this journey. 3 months after Damien and I had reconciled, while we were preparing the very first annual meeting of the foundation created in Isabella's memory, a letter arrived that would once again change everything we thought we knew. It came from a notary in Boston. Inside, the message explained that Isabella had kept a safety deposit box hidden for years. The box could only be opened if very specific conditions were met. Damien had to work for his own living for at least 3 months. He had to truly help someone in need, and both father and son had to officially sign documents showing reconciliation. Mum really did think of everything, Damien whispered as we read the letter side by side. She even planned for what would happen after we learned our lessons. We didn't waste time. That same week, we traveled to Boston. At the bank, an employee guided us down into a cold underground vault where a medium-sized metal safe was waiting. With shaking hands, we opened it. Inside was something that left us breathless. There were some financial papers, yes, but far more important was a bundle of letters. They were carefully dated, numbered, and written during Isabella's last 2 years. Each was addressed to a different stage of our family's healing. The first envelope was marked for the moment. Damien had understood the value of work. Damien opened it and began to read, his tears falling freely. My dear son, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered what I always knew was within you. The strength to be independent, the heart to be compassionate. Work is not punishment. Work is a gift, a bridge to your own dignity. The second letter was addressed to me. With trembling fingers, I read aloud. To Alexander, the strongest man I know. My eternal love, thank you for standing firm when I could not. Thank you for loving our son enough to let him fall, to let him make mistakes that would hurt you both. I know these months were the hardest of your life, but I also know no one else in the world could have guided Damien back to his true self. Finally, 1 year after reconciling, we launched the Isabella Anderson Foundation. Damien became executive director, while I served as chairman. Though he left his job at the electronics store, he never abandoned his friendships there. In fact, Jason and a few others joined our foundation, bringing their real struggles and insights to help us reach families in need. You know what's strange, Dad? Damien said one day as we inaugurated our 10th scholarship program. I'm happier now, working 14 hours a day to help others, than I ever was when I could buy anything I wanted. Mom was right. Real happiness is when your life has a purpose bigger than yourself. That night, as we reviewed applications for small business loans to support hard-working fathers, I thought of the incredible journey we had taken. Isabella hadn't only saved her son's soul, she had transformed our entire family into something greater, something meaningful. Dad, Damien said softly as we approved 50 new loans, do you think Mum would be proud of us? I looked at him, the boy who once drowned in greed, now a man giving hope to others, and I smiled. Your mother always knew what we would become, and right now, wherever she is, I'm certain she's smiling. Her plan didn't just succeed, it went beyond even her highest hopes. Damien smiled back and returned to his work. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in a quiet little office, two men were reshaping lives with their choices. I hadn't saved my son with wealth. I saved him by letting him learn to save himself. In doing so, we discovered that true riches aren't measured in bank accounts, but in the heart's ability to turn pain into kindness, selfishness into generosity, and loss into purpose. Isabella, my beloved Isabella, had known this truth all along. If this story touched you, please show your support by pressing the like button. That way I can share many more stories like this with you. Thank you for listening. Now I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in this father's place? Share it in the comments and also tell me where you're watching from. If you want to hear more real-life stories filled with lessons and hope, like this video and subscribe to Infidelity Tales Hub. Many more stories are waiting for you. A big hug to all of you, and until next time.